and welcome to the 15th annual W.C. Lacy Distinguished Lecture Series. I'm Moe Momayez, interim head of the Department of Mining and Geological Engineering. This year, the MGE department, the Lowell Institute for Mineral Resources, and the University of Arizona would all like to pay homage to a major icon in the mining industry, Mr. David Lowell. The mining world lost a shining star earlier this year. Many of you have heard of or were directly touched by the work of David Lowell, who studied mining engineering in our department and received a BS degree in 1949. He was a great benefactor to many of our students, programs, and initiatives. Founder of the Lowell Institute for Mineral Resources, David was a giant in the field of mining exploration and made several landmark discoveries, often in areas completely dismissed by other geologists. He embodied an Einstein-like combination of inspiration and knowledge, and loomed large everywhere he set foot around the globe. This was a man who never stopped working, never stopped exploring, and never stopped fostering new talent. He showed tremendous interest in MGE and our students. David was a huge inspiration to me in that regard. Recently, thanks to David's generous gift, the David and Edith Lowell Endowed Chair for Mining and Geological Engineering was established to promote the vision and support the mission of the department. A lifelong philanthropist, is survived by his lovely wife, Edith, his children and grandchildren. He will be dearly missed. Please join me in remembering the great life of David Lowell.
The mine I was working in was hot and deep and dangerous. At that time, very low emphasis was put on mine safety, and there were 2 people killed in that mine while I was there.
My goodness.
In separate accidents that I think might have been prevented by a better safety program. I was close to being in a fatal accident 3 times in the 2 years.
3 times in the same mine that you were
Yes.
working in? I see.
In one case, started down walking down the level, and I, out of the corner of my eye, looked down at the reflector on my light, which was hung on my belt, and I thought, that's strange. The little strip of burning gas has moved out 1 or 2 inches from the reflector. And I thought about that for about 1 second, and it struck me that there wasn't any oxygen in the air. And so I turned around and scuttled back and started down the ladder, and then I could feel myself passing out. And there was a space about 6 inches between the ladder and the rock wall at that point. And so I hurriedly stuck my arms over the ladder and against the rock, and then passed out. And my light and hard hat went down the raise, and after a while I recovered consciousness, but it was absolutely dead darkness at that point. And I had to feel I wasn't feeling top shape anyway, but I had to feel my way down the ladder, and then there was a pile of broken rock at the base of the ladder, and I felt around and found my light and was able to get it. It was out, but it was still making carbide, and I was able to get it lighted and walk out. I'll never forget that little episode.
Hi, I'm David Hahn, the Craig M. Burge Dean of the College of Engineering. I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words today in memory of J. David Lowell. I'm very fortunate to have known David since arriving in Tucson a little more than a year ago. I came to the University of Arizona due to its rich history in engineering, a history that is founded in mining and geological engineering, and a history that is forever linked to J. David Lowell. Knowing the importance of mining to this institution, the very first visit I made to an alumnus of the University of Arizona was to have lunch with David. For all of his accomplishments, at his heart, David was a true gentleman. We talked about mining, his first in the world record of mineral deposit discovery, and his strong love of the University of Arizona, the College of Engineering, and the Department of Mining and Geological Engineering. I will forever cherish a signed copy of David's book that he gave me, The Intrepid Explorer. It was also an honor to work directly with David and President Robbins as we envisioned a school of mining engineering and mineral resources, with the goal of reuniting his legacies in the Lowell Institute for Mineral Resources and the Department of Mining and Geological Engineering. The generosity of Edith and David over the years to this institution will forever be felt by the students and faculty members. David impacted many, including me, in meaningful ways, always leading by example. I remember fondly sitting with David at last year's Lacy Lecture. He was a true pioneer, and he is remembered fondly by the many people that he touched. We will always be grateful and better off for having known David. Thank you.
Hello, I'm John Lacy, and I'm pleased to provide this contribution to the stories about Dave Lowell. Dave Lowell and my dad, Bill Lacy, were close friends and very close professional colleagues. And Dad had provided quite a bit of assistance to Dave in connection with the Toromocho project in Peru. And Dave called me one day and said, you know, your dad has provided a lot of assistance to me and never billed me for that. And so would he accept a trip down to Peru to look at the project? Well, Dad was 90 years old at the time. And so I said, well, he probably would if he could take his son with him. And so that's when we enjoyed a trip down with Dad and Dave Lowell down to the Toromocho project and in the Morococha mining district in Peru. And so here we are at the highest railroad pass in the world. That's Dave, myself, and Dad standing by the sign that says that this railroad crossing is at almost 16,000 feet. And it was truly an enjoyable trip. And I think that Dad really enjoyed it, looking at the geology on the ground. And here's an image of Dad with Dave Lowell in the background. So that was a truly fun trip, thanks to the generosity of Dave.
I'm Mary Poulton, Professor Emerita of Mining and Geological Engineering at the University of Arizona and co-director of the Lowell Institute for Mineral Resources. I was head of the Department of Mining and Geological Engineering for many years. I, of course, knew Dave Lowell through my studies in economic geology at the University of Arizona. He was a legend in my textbook and in my classes. But when you're a student, you don't always realize that the name in a textbook is actually a real human being. So I was amazed as a student when I was at a Geological Society of Arizona meeting, and there was a person walking through the lobby and a big crowd of people following him around. And I asked someone who that was. And they said, oh, of course, that's Dave Lowell. He was a celebrity. And to this day, I remember my amazement at seeing someone as a real life human who was a legend in textbooks. When I became department head, Tom O'Neill helped me form an advisory group. And the first person he recommended be on that board was Dave Lowell. And so I've gotten to know Dave and Edith over the years and learned more about that human being behind the legend. Dave was always generous with his time, his advice, his financial support. He always demanded results, and the faster the better, but he was always generous. And his guidance, his advice, his perseverance, his patience really transformed my life and career and permanently transformed the minerals programs at the University of Arizona. There would not be a famous Dave without Edith. And I want to say that Edith has been as much an influence on my life and career as Dave. And the lifelong romance between Dave and Edith is a model for all of us. I think love defines our lives. To Edith and the entire Lowell family, I'm grateful you so willingly shared Dave with all of us. He's missed, but he lives on through your wonderful lives and through all of our memories, and God bless.
The mining industry is built on the shoulders of giants. And to me, David Lowell was the greatest of those giants. It's not only because of his ability to find fantastic mines in all parts of the world, it's also because of his willingness to share his knowledge, his experiences, and his friendship. It's also because of his love for the University of Arizona. Didn't matter whether it was athletics or the Lowell Institute of Mineral Resources or the students, David loved this university. As a matter of fact, in a phone call a week before he died, the last thing that David asked me was, "How's the new school going?" Well, David, I'm happy to tell you that the new school is going really well, especially with some of the support that we're getting from the Lundin family. You would really like what's going on. And David, I'd also like to tell you that I miss you. I miss the dinners, I miss the long conversations, but most of all, I miss your friendship. Lyndon and I were so fortunate that you let us be a part of your life. And David, I miss standing on the shoulder of a giant. Thank you very much for all that you've done.
George Davis here. Such a privilege to pay tribute to Dave Lowell. When I first got interested in structural geology, one of the things that was so fascinating was the application of structural geology to the discovery of ore deposits. Of course, I was just reading that from books and articles. Dave was a living example of excellence and creativity, heroism in that whole area. That was his career. I had the privilege of spending a little time with him down in Chile to see him in action, to see his game face on when he's on the search for ore deposits. I had the pleasure of taking my students up to San Manuel in the Kalamazoo area and having Dave in person give us the story of that discovery. And finally, in this short tribute, can't thank Dave and the Lowells enough for generous contributions to the Geological Society of America, establishing the Lowell Scholarship Program for field camp, for students, for years in the future. Dave, we think about you. You've been an inspiration.
This is a picture of David Lowell with his geologists, Luis Rivera and Angel Alvarez. The picture is from year 2006, when they were working for Minera Peru Copper. The following is a comment from Mr. Angel Alvarez. In this picture, we can see David Lowell in level 1000, 4,500 meters above the sea level, in the underground mine of Morococha. These old workings were excavated in the Toromocho porphyry copper deposit. He is looking to the copper disseminations in the rocks to recommend the continuation of the diamond drill program in depth. I have worked with David Lowell for 7 years to complete the exploration of Toromocho with successful results until the sale to Minera Chinalco, now in production with 170,000 tons per day. I would like to thank Dr. David Lowell for his great contribution in the geological exploration of my country, Peru, with many greenfield projects, which now are continuing in exploration along all the country, and 2 big projects in actual production, Pierina and Toromocho.
Hello, I'm Mark Barton, co-director of the Lowell Institute for Mineral Resources and professor of geosciences. It is bittersweet for me to acknowledge the enormous impact that Dave Lowell had and continues to have through his intellectual and philanthropic legacies. He impacted so many people. For me, it was especially through his passionate engagement here at the University of Arizona. Although my family connections with Dave go back to the 1950s, when he and my father were both working on the uranium deposits of the Colorado Plateau, my relationship with him dates to the 1990s, when he was an active member of the advisory board for the Department of Geosciences. At that time, we had many animated discussions about how to build a better approach to practical training for mineral industry geologists. This ultimately led to Dave and Edith's first endowment, which established the Lowell Program in Economic Geology. I really appreciated how generous Dave was with his time and with his help in thinking about how we could both improve and build our program. For instance, I recall several lunches that Dave organized with Bill Lacy so that Bill could share his experience in developing an analogous program in Australia. Ultimately, it was the Lowell's gift that was key to sustaining and growing Arizona's world-class program in mineral resource geology. Since the early 2000s, the Lowell program has engaged well over 1,000 professionals and graduate students from all over the world. This includes the group from one of our advanced mapping courses, shown here in the background. Since the 90s, Dave's continued engagement and Dave and Edith's generous support have been crucial to building toward a shared vision of an integrated approach to the many issues related to mineral resources. The success of the Lowell Institute and the excitement around a future transdisciplinary school are testament to his vision of what is possible. For all of this, I am tremendously grateful. I miss his wisdom and friendship, but I take comfort in knowing that his legacy will be vibrant and long-lasting. Thank you.
Hello, this is Eric Seedorff. I hold the Lowell Chair in Economic Geology in the Department of Geosciences. And that chair was endowed back in 1999, and I joined the university in January of 2002. And we've done a whole series of things in the Department of Geosciences in the ore deposits area as a result of Dave Lowell's generous gift. And before going on, I'd like to acknowledge the pleasure it was to work with Dave, also his wife Edith, and to get to know their children, who were families just amazing. So as a result of that, for one thing, we put on a series of short courses. We held a porphyry short course beginning in December of 2004. And through December 2019, we had held 16 of those short courses, each of which was about 10 days long with field trips, labs, and lectures. We also offered a short course in September that was the ore deposits mapping course, first led in September 2005. Again, I should mention Mark Barton and I have co-led these. The ore deposits mapping short course has been delivered 14 different times. And then Lucas Searcher led an underground mine mapping class back in 2006. And we have future plans for a structural geology class for mine and exploration geologists in the future when the time of COVID is past us. At any rate, a rough accounting of the number of people who've been through the short courses is about 1,054, excluding staff. That includes about 730 industry people, including people from, for instance, the USGS and state surveys, et cetera. And counting students of all stripes, there are another 324 folks there. So nearly 1,400 people have been through our short courses. Those people have been from 81 different companies, and by my count, about 45 of those companies have had at least 2 participants. The companies with the most would be Newmont and Freeport, but some other significant ones include Rio Tinto, Pinyoles, Teck, Anglo American, BHP, and Anglo Gold Ashanti. And the country assignments sometimes are difficult, but a rough estimate is we've had about 30 people from about 33 countries participate. Another thing that was made possible by Dave's generous gift was the creation of a new sort of industry-oriented master's program called the Professional Science Masters in Economic Geology. And we've had, of those who've graduated to date, we've had 23 of them coming from 6 different countries. So as you can see, Dave has made a huge impact, and these people are continuing to practice in the industry and be some of our future leaders. So it's been my pleasure to have benefited personally also from everything that Dave has done in the industry. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Adriana Anazco, and I am from Paraguay, and I am also a graduate from class 2013 thanks to a scholarship granted by David Lowell. What can I say about David? He was an amazing professional, an amazing explorer, and even a better person. I am so thankful for having the opportunity to meet him, work with him, and learn so much from him. David not only helped find new deposits all around the world, he also helped develop the mining sectors in many countries, like mine, for example. I am sure that David will be missed, and I hope someday I get the opportunity to run into him in heaven and hear again all his great stories.
Hi everybody, I'm Nestor Bernal from Paraguay. I'm an electromechanical engineer. I graduated from the David Lowell Master's Program in Mining Engineering at the University of Arizona in May 2013. So everybody's sad about David's passing. Although he is not with us anymore, his legacy will continue and remain. David Lowell was a really generous person, and he wouldn't mind talking about his projects and his experience for hours. He was a natural teacher. He was a mentor for me, and he was always willing to share his knowledge about geology and the mining industry, and that was something really valuable. David Lowell made a huge impact in the mining industry worldwide, as well in Paraguay. He discovered one of the largest titanium deposits in the world, in my country. He made a lot of contributions to the Paraguayan mining law in order to bring investment and develop the mining industry. Thanks to the opportunity he gave me to study mining engineering, I also had the chance to make contributions to the government, working at the Vice Ministry of Mines and Energy, traveling around the world, trying to bring investment to my country and in order to develop our small and mining industry. David Lowell always told me that he wanted the National University of Paraguay to sign an agreement with the University of Arizona, which is now a dream come true. We signed the agreement a few months ago. So the agreement will allow us to do some research about the mining deposits in Paraguay and to develop those deposits, and also to develop strategies to grow our mining industry. So that's David Lowell, a really generous man and someone who made a huge impact in the world, and his legacy will remain.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom O'Neill, and my wife Peggy and I are honored to start the Lacy Lecture series about 15 years ago. And today we're remembering one of our greatest lecturers, Dave Lowell. For decades, Dave was kind of a bigger than life person in the mining industry. I was acquainted with him, but I really didn't get to know him until about 15 years ago, when we were involved in the Peru copper venture, which was one of Dave's greatest successes as an entrepreneur. He was a great guy to work with. Dave was has all the characteristics of a great entrepreneur. He was a pusher. He wanted to see things get done. He didn't suffer fools very gladly. But at the same time, he was a gentle and honest, ethical guy with a ready smile and a good joke. It was a real pleasure working with Dave. I enjoyed every minute of it. I've never known a man who loved his work more than Dave. I think he was happiest when he was climbing around the Peruvian Andes, as he did until he was about 90 years old. And he truly loved his work. You know, there's a lot of talk this past year about goats. There weren't very many games being played and sports on TV, so everybody started to talk about who was the greatest of all time. Was it Michael Jordan in basketball, Jack Nicklaus in golf? There's the talks about the quarterback goats. Who's the greatest quarterback of all time? Well, I want to submit to you that I think Dave Lowell was the goat of ore finding. I think he was one of the greatest ore finders we've ever known. And that legacy lives on today. Some of his discoveries are now being developed. There's a project in Ecuador right now that is going through detailed exploration. I think that's going to be a copper whopper. I think it's going to be another great discovery of Dave's. I'm sure going to miss my friend Dave Lowell.
The following are comments from Martin Kuhn. Dave Lowell. How does one fit Dave into 1 to 2 minutes? I take great pleasure with this opportunity to comment on the achievements of a gentleman, scholar, and one of the greatest geologists, as well as an incredible businessman, i.e., David Lowell. Dave was one of the founding members of Minerals Advisory Group that included Dave, Kay Pincock of PAH, Peter Crescenzo, Senior Vice President of Newmont, George Steele, Senior Vice President of Valley National Bank, Michael Bickers, ex-President Davy McKee, and me, President of Western States Engineering. About 2 weeks from opening the doors of MAG, Dave decided he was already on too many boards, but helped bring in important projects for years. I had an opportunity to work closely to Dave on a number of projects he was interested in. Two of these projects were world-class projects that only Dave would take on. Number one, Toromocho copper at 15,000 feet in Peru. Dave purchased the Toromocho project from Peru for $5 million US. He drilled the project, hired MAG to define the metallurgy at Metcon, and provide engineering services for the feasibility study. The project was sold to Chinalco. Chinalco built the project for about $3.2 billion, and the project recently expanded at a cost of $1 billion. Toromocho is one of the largest projects in Peru and owes its appreciation to Dave and his geological acumen. Many of Dave's associates and friends profited greatly by knowing and trusting Dave. Number two, Piranha titanium in Paraguay. Dave told me that when at Stanford for his master's degree, one of his professors encouraged him to find at some point in his career a large aluminum deposit. He started looking in Ecuador for copper and also an aluminum. Finding no large aluminum project, he began a search in Paraguay. He noted high aluminum was present in agricultural areas and sampled lateritic aluminum areas and sent the samples to MAG Research and Development in Tucson. Results from these samples demonstrated high aluminum, iron, and titanium. These assays encouraged Dave to study the very high-grade titanium materials in the laterite. After much study and development work, Dave authorized the design and construction of a very large pilot plant in Paraguay to produce high-grade titanium concentrates for smelter testings in South Africa. The smelter titanium was determined to be very high grade. As a result of this work, Dave is credited with finding the largest titanium resource in the world. The titanium deposit has since been taken over by the Paraguayan government. At some point in the future, Paraguay will lead the world in sales of titanium products. Many thanks, Dave.
I think one of the biggest advantages I've had is I've had almost perfect freedom to decide how to look for mines, and when all's said and done, my career demonstrates that I'm very good at being wrong. I think my primary objective was the lure of the chase. 3 out of 1,000 good-looking prospects become mines. That's 1 out of 333. It's a big number. You visit and look at and study a mineral prospect. You think, well, this really looks pretty good. Then you think, well, gosh, that I'll have to look at 500 of these to find a new mine. I think it's a mad scientist that discovers a new blockbuster drug, and he does this together with the pill factory. The philosophy and the strategy and rules and regulations in the pill factory are follow the directions of the business schools that teach you how to efficiently do business, and there's a hierarchy that's carefully defined. And the whole climate is designed around don't ever make any mistakes and keep your nose clean, and eventually you might become president of the pill factory. But the profile of the mad scientist is totally different. He would like to win a Nobel Prize and write articles, and he couldn't care less about all the rules and regulations. And the way he finds a new drug is by ignoring the existing dogma and having new ideas and making lots of mistakes. And the same thing happens in mining companies. On my side, it doesn't really bother me at all drawing.
Drilling dusters?
Drawing dusters. The greatest things that have ever happened to me are these mine discoveries. It's really like finding a Spanish treasure ship in the Caribbean.